Hey everybody, this is the Philosophy Society. Achilles Justice here. It's November 22nd, 2023. We are at the Toronto Metropolitan University Library, room 661B. We have people in the room, people online, people in the future. This will be the past for them. And yeah, so to start off, is there anything that anybody feels or wants to talk about?
There's just a question. I'm curious. You don't have to go into it, but I'm just curious what you covered last week. I missed last week.
Last week, we talked about feeling and how to deal with emotions in ourselves and others, and how situations can elicit feelings, right? How we can have feelings on what's going on in our lives, in us, and the external world. And what to do about that, how we respond to it. So, have you seen the YouTube channel?
Yes.
Okay, so you can always just podcast it. You know, that's the thing.
It's already up there.
It's not up yet. I talked to my marketing guy today. He is working on it. The most recent one was from the 1st of November, so we're a couple weeks behind.
Sure.
And yeah, so it's a slight review because we went through this stuff before. The David Byrne stuff is very focused on the cognitive distortion part of feeling, and I'm philosophizing the term feeling, it almost analogous to the term awareness, right? So I feel my emotions. I'm aware of my emotions. And when I have an emotion, being mindful of whatever that might be is very important because I don't want to be reactive. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up was a humbling moment because I got angry recently and one of the members didn't really know how to deal with me. And so I was explaining inadvertently, this is what you do.
I think we
all do, but it's me not being like arrogant and pretending like I don't ever make a mistake or I can't improve, right? And that's not what it's about, you know? Like being a teacher is being able to demonstrate stuff. It's not about an appeal to authority where you never make mistakes. It's about saying, when this is how I fuck up, and when I do fuck up, this is how I can better myself, and this is what you guys can do in response to someone that's upset like this, whoever it is, you know. Because part of the Philosophy Society is we want to create an organization that responds to the problems of, like, from a political position, fascism and tyranny, which is at a fundamental level an appeal to authority, right? And then just in social groups, you know, we have Milgram's experiment. Does everyone know Milgram's experiment?
I don't.
Okay. So Milgram's experiment, all right, time to draw. So, you know, so it's like the organization in itself. So we have some form of social organization, and just having multiple people in a group, that can create problems, right? And so what we want to do is we want to find some way to look at the relations in between people and how the group at like a meta level is related, right? Some form of principle, or the interactions between each person, right? If we can control for those two variables, the hypothesis would be, then we can avoid certain problems, like Nazi Germany. You know, like that was bad, right? Like that was not a good thing. Like the Holocaust is a bad thing.
They should have just let him into art school.
They should have just let him into art school. That's the solution. It's just put money in the arts and you'll fucking, you know, arts and meditation. We're good to go. So in some groups, there can be a perceived authority, right? So let's just make this a big thing here. So this is the authority figure, right? In quotes. And that can be like a political figure, or it could just be, in Milgram's experiment, a confederate or a person that worked for the experiment just wearing a lab coat. So what they did is they brought in a participant, and they had this like machine thing, and the dude is sitting there, and then there's the lab coat guy, right? And there's like a thing, and then there's this other guy who's strapped to this voltage meter. And there's all these little buttons on the computer, and the person with the lab coat, both of these people worked for the experiment. And this person was actually the subject. And this person was an actor. And they administered fake shocks to the actor, right? And what they were trying to see is how far would the subject go all the way to like 450 volts. Like it would kill the person if it was actually done, right? Yeah. And so this is an experiment on conformity. It's like how far will this happen? Because of the perceived authority figure and the subject that was like, they started screaming saying, I have a heart condition, please stop, please stop. And the experimenter would say, no, you must continue. Right? Yeah. And like the majority of people kept on going all the way to the end. There's a lot, right? And so part of it is like a diffusion of responsibility. So this is a real thing. Those people would have died, right? And the actor made it seem like they had a heart attack, and the person kept on zapping them, right? So
because they're being told by the person in authority.
yeah. So when we go back to the structure of any social organization, this is a property, right? So we have certain properties. One is perceived authority. Another one is conformity. There's how the group is structured, right? And so I'm applying philosophy by drawing upon, when I say that, what I mean is I'm drawing upon these known properties or biases in the way that humans function. Another one is groupthink.
Was it done with only one subject?
Yeah. In this specific, we have done other versions.
I feel like they should have got multiple subjects to see the percentage of people that would like quote unquote retaliate to authority in order for, would you consider that justice? Not justice, but ethics, morals? If they're telling you to stop and then like the person in authority tells you to keep on going, like you have a brain of your own and you could say something back.
Yeah, like, yeah, it would be like resisting authority or like, you know, like it would be like a healthy version of rebellion, maybe you could say, or maybe there's a certain like psychological factor, you know, that is important in this sense. So when I say that the Philosophy Society is when I use that, it's not just like the history of philosophy. Like we talk about Plato, you know, it's like, how is the group constructed such that it reflects wisdom of the knowledge we have on how humans are a little fucked up sometimes, right? Because that would be good. You know, like if we could find a way to put the puzzle pieces together to prevent situations like this, that's wise. When I say that's wise, what do you mean by that? I mean that it's an accurate use of judgment based on the information given, right? And so my role in the Philosophy Society is not to be the authority. Why? Because then I risk having problems like this occur, people just listening to what I have to say because I said it and not understanding the content or how it's being used, right? Whereas what my role is more of like to facilitate, to bring it all together and create a safe place to practice to prevent things like this. And there's different like modules. Sorry, James.
I don't know, I'm thinking in my head.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to like, if you want to say something. Yes.
How would you prevent such a thing happening?
So we would practice what you said, being able to question and respond to authority, right? So there's the knowledge of critical thinking, but there's the social element of being able to exercise critical thinking in a situation. Another one would be like the bystander effect. So when there's a crisis situation, right? Like somebody gets into a car accident and they're trapped in the car or they're unconscious in the car. the more people present at the accident, the less likely that any one of those people will actually help the person. Because it's a diffusion of responsibility. The individual just feels in some way that somebody else will do something. But if everyone does that, if you universalize that property, nobody does anything, right? So what we're doing here is we're saying, how can we construct some kind of a social group explicitly, right? Like we're thinking about it. We're like an engineer. We're like, I'm going to build it this way, you know, so that we are aware of these properties. So when we had you were here for that, maybe James was, when we went through the 150 cognitive biases on the website, chapter.
Can make that thing.
There's a lot of them, cognitive biases, right? And at the beginning of the chapter, I give like an outline of how we can mitigate or counterbalance the biases we already have inside of us, right? And one way to do that, the only way is with some group that exchanges feedback with each other, right? So if I become emotionally triggered and I'm not aware of myself, somebody else can say, hey, Achilles, are you okay? Like their brain, their limbic system is not activated. So they can use their prefrontal cortex and their limbic system together to kind of help me be aware of my current state, calm me down, and give me the space to think and make a rational decision based on how I feel. And so in this case, it would be like the authority dictating to the person what to do, because there's this like hierarchy. The relationship here is like a power imbalance, right? That's one version. Another version with like the Trumpism phenomenon is misinformation. The election was stolen, right? Like this narrative. And it wasn't. Maybe in Trump's mind, he felt entitled that this is mine. Or like, it's like, the door is mine, my door. And then someone comes and like, they're like, no, it's not. Like, we work for the university. It's like, the university's door, and they take it away. But I believed it was mine. From my perspective, if someone steals the door, they take it off the hinges and they're like, we're taking it away. Right? I can say, you stole the door. But no, it's based on completely inaccurate information. If Trump, from his perspective, we're being empathetic to his delusional thinking, right? Like, well, how did you think this way? Empathy, there's two forms, right? One is cognitive. So it's like a perspective thing, or it's intellectual. Number two is emotional. It's how does the other person feel? So this one you can see, this one you feel what the other person is going on with them.
Are they both interlinked? Like, in order for you to understand the emotion part, don't you have to see it and like process it and make the connections in your brain in order to feel it?
No.
Or is it more like you see them living it and you can put yourself in their shoes and relive it, quote unquote, on your own and then feel it?
Yeah, no, there's this book called Against Empathy that I like wrote a huge report on.
Mm-hmm.
And the author says that empathy is actually bad for us when we're creating policy, because empathy is very individual. And when you're talking about an entire group of people, if you focus on one person, it calls it the lighthouse effect. It is unethical because you're not helping all of the people. So for example, on the news, they'll have like, this kid fell down a well. Can we get donations to help the child out? And then because people are empathetic to that one individual child, they sent like thousands of dollars of food and like other stuff like dolls or like toys and shit, right? They're making these donations. But then when you look at the percentage of children in the United States that are suffering from malnutrition or low income families, they don't get anything. So how is it ethical that this one kid that was on the news gets a bunch of stuff, right? More than the family can even put in the house, for example. It's beyond what's appropriate to even resolve the situation. And then all these other kids are suffering, right? So in that instance, empathy is not necessarily the best way to be ethical from a utilitarian perspective, which makes sense. In relationships, however, empathy is very important. And so it's important to understand how people feel, but if I experience the emotion of other people, that may not be very useful. For example, because I can experience it, but I can also be dissociated and I can say, this does feel bad. I understand how you feel, but I don't need to be trapped in those emotions myself. I can stand outside them, like as a mental health counselor, for example, when someone's upset, if I also get upset too, now we're both upset.
Is there a connection with that and stoicism?
Yeah, sure. For sure. Yeah. And so sometimes being empathetic is being able to see what the other person's experiencing. I can allow myself to feel it, but I don't have to lose myself in those feelings because it didn't happen to me. Right? And you can like sit with a person that like has suffered and you can look in their face and you can experience what they're experiencing, but then you can come back to yourself and say, okay, I understand how you feel. And now we can talk about it. And you can help them get through whatever the trauma might be.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I just searched up utilitarianism,
Mhm.
and this is the doctrine that actions are right if they're useful or for the benefit of a majority.
Mhm.
So does that basically means to an end? Like it means
It's consequential. Yes.
to an end? Is that how you say it? It means to an end.
An action is justified
Yeah.
if
The outcome is
the outcome is good, then the means are good. Right? So we have like the trolley case example. If I can save 10 lives, but I have to kill one person from a utilitarian perspective, that's justified. So the principle would be the greatest happiness for the greatest amount of people is like the standard utilitarian position. Right?
Mhm.
So part of my responsibility as this person is I have to demonstrate a release of authority, right? And any person that would be a facilitator of of Achilles Justice's Philosophy Society, right? Whatever that is. There's other philosophy societies, but they're not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm structuring the group as if I'm being an engineer, right? So when you say engineers, they build bridges, right? There's like water, and this is the bridge. And then we have our engineer here, right? And they're like, well, we need to like have some structural parts in the bridge to make sure whatever weight is on here, it will not collapse, and then people will die, right? And so the engineer can foresee through an application of physics and like, for example, the property of metallurgy, like what the properties of the metal being used, steel or whatever's going on, right? Will the bridge sustain the weight, right? And so if we were going to be a social engineer, not in like the Nazism, Hitler fucking crowd crazy shit, in a way that we can prevent that stuff from happening, like an ethical social engineer. And we're saying, okay, we're a social group, we have certain properties. How can we fit these people together in such a way that it's a good thing? Right? And so as the physical engineer or the civil engineer is foreseeing how the bridge could fall and has preventative measures to ensure it doesn't fall, we're looking at how social groups fit together, right? And we want to structure the social group foreseeing how it can fall. Right? And businesses do this. If you have a successful business, that's what you want to do. When we have a meeting, I want to make sure that my team gives me feedback. Right? So when I say like groupthink, this is like the Challenger spaceship. There was like O-rings that there was a problem with them, and then the space shuttle blew up. Right? When it was lifting off, people died. And in the meeting, there was at least 2 people that knew that was going to become a problem. And so what they did is they didn't say something, or they did say something, but the group punished them for it because they weren't conforming to the norm of let's just get this done and get it over with. We don't care if that's a problem. It's a minor risk. We're going to fire you, right? The whistleblower's dilemma. If you criticize us or if you go against what we think is the right answer, right? And religion functions this way too. If I walk in the room and say, yeah, but God doesn't exist. everybody's gonna be like, they're gonna be like, we need to kill that guy right over there. We got lots of space on this wall. We can just hang you up here and continue praying, right? And they used to do that for a long time. And so that's, I don't know, what do you think about that, right? Where'd the philosophers go? Well, so we think about the properties, and these are like negative. They can be negative, maybe they can be positive. We just want to see them as like a force of nature, right? When I put my head underneath the guillotine, the force of gravity is not good for me, you know? But if I have a bunch of buckets under a tree and I shake the tree and all the fruit goes in the buckets, gravity was a good thing there. It was good for me. So when I say that it can be used for a good thing, if we have a person with, for example, low cognitive capacity, they just don't understand the content. And so they can only rely on conformity as a way to participate and feel a part of the group. They just go along with the flow of the river, right? And as long as they feel good, they're fine. They don't really care. You're nice to me, you give me food, I'm happy with it. That's where those properties can be a good thing, right? But very, very quickly, it can become bad, as in like Trumpism, right? When you have people that are not thinking critically, that are basing their their decisions only on emotion and like entertainment value. That's now we have an issue here, right? So, okay. So one thing is the principles that or values that the group is coming together based on. And then the other is the interactions between the members, which as an effect will create an emergent phenomenon of how those people fit together. Like so the principle is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So this is like a principle, right?
Is that like a principle for a specific example? How did you call this example? Milgram?
This is like how
Not Milgram.
the ideal way to construct a social organization.
You called it something else in the beginning. I forgot the name.
There's Milgram's experiment based on conformity.
Oh, that's based on conformity, and this is just the general structure.
This is a normative way to structure a social group, right? And so when I say philosophy society, I mean that there is wisdom in how it is put together.
So that's our principle.
That there are principles that we follow on how it goes together, but then there's mechanical ways that it is put together. So the one principle is like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which generally just means that a bicycle that is built is a different thing than all the pieces of a bike, right? The whole has more value or more informational content or even utility than just a pile of metal, right? You can say it's the same thing, but it's not. The arrangement of the thing is what makes it distinct, right? And so the philosophy society, Achilles Justice Philosophy Society, is distinct because of how I've arranged it. I've arranged it, and part of this is because of my martial arts training. It's because you can walk into a dojo and I have a black belt on right now. Or it's brown, pretty high rank. Okay, brown belt, right? And you say, I'm a brown belt. I am the best. And they go, okay. You saying that or wearing the thing has no relevance to your skill. The only way for your skill to have relevance is through demonstration. So for example, super funny, there was a seminar, the Grand Master of Combat Hapkido, John Pellegrini at the time, he flew to Thunder Bay and it was a 3-day seminar, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay. Friday was an invite only for police officers, prison guards, and military personnel, because it was like serious training with guns and maybe assassin kills and knife stuff. Okay, so civilians couldn't go. So I wasn't allowed to go. So it was just civilian. And this old man is in his 50s at least. Skinny guy, the Grand Master. And there's this jacked cop, right? And he's arrogant. He's like, basically like, fuck you, old man. What do you think you know? I deal with these drunken people in Thunder Bay every day. You know, that's my job. And so he puts the old man in a headlock. He's like, ha, ha, ha. What are you going to do about that? I'm going to make you look like a fool in front of everybody. Right? And within like a split second, the old man did something called an outside wrist throw. It's where you throw the wrist like this. Okay. And he threw the guy down. And like my instructor, who has a black belt, said it was the ugliest wrist throw he's ever seen on somebody. Right? And the guy was like on the ground, like screaming. And in that moment, you could say Pellegrini was probably a little like, fuck you. Like, he's like, you deserve this. And that, you know, if that's sadistic, well, maybe it's justified, right? Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because you can't just read a book and call yourself a philosopher. You can't just say that you're an expert because you have a PhD. It's how you act in the world and relate to other people that makes you a master. And there will be moments when you are tested and challenged, and that's when your mastery will come through. Right? Because nobody else could do it, only you. And other people will fuck with you. You say, are you really the master? Because they want to be the master. That's part of humans' like hierarchical relations with each other. That's a property, like social hierarchy.
The primitive thing, right?
Yeah, it's like reptilian.
Reptilian.
We are lizards still, kind of, and we're filling each other up. We're like, who's better, me or you? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Sticking your tongue up, right? There's healthy ways. We talked about this when we talked about standing your ground. There's healthy ways to be in a position, and then there are unhealthy ways. We've talked about selfishness and self-interest, right? If you're taking care of yourself, that's in your self-interest. That's okay. If you're taking away from other people, that's selfish. And there may be, you'd say, well, is it absolute? You know, okay, there might be circumstances that we can talk about where it's like, maybe it is acceptable here. I don't know. But that's an exception to the rule, right? And as Dr. Hammond say, if you read this, if he would say that the exception to the rule does not make the rule, right?
The exception
to the rule does not make the rule.
Exception to the rule does not make.
We may observe a general pattern in the cosmos. You know, for example, the sun and the moon are usually always separate. There's the sun and there's the moon. But sometimes, what happens? Oh, there's an eclipse. All the vampires come out and they bite you. Right? Sometimes that happens. You know, we have this sun-moon situation, the eclipse. Okay. We don't say the eclipse is the rule of sun-moon behavior. All right? It is something that occurs, but generally speaking, it follows this pattern. Right?
Can you say the phrase again one more time? Sorry. I was overthinking.
Eclipse?
No, the rule doesn't.
Oh, the exception to the rule doesn't make the rules. That's not a principle.
So what makes the rule then?
1 second. Well, first we want to talk about what a rule is. What is a rule? And Wittgenstein would talk about conventionality, how people generally behave in a certain way, right? So patterns in nature, and if language is representing those patterns, that's what we would mean by that, like gravity. It's basically a rule that things fall or things are attracted to larger bodies. The Earth is such a large body in the cosmos. Things that are proportionately smaller, and physicists can calculate this. I don't know, they could show me and I would be able to do it, but we would say that they would be attracted. But we would not say that Jupiter is attracted to Earth. It would be the other way around because Jupiter is so much larger than Earth. So why am I talking about this? Because you asked me last week, or what we talked about, and I began that discussion because I became upset as a human, someone that's had some trauma and some emotional stuff when I was younger. I have a predisposition to getting upset sometimes, right? For me to be mature and to be an adult, the justice of Achilles' justice is to take responsibility for that, whatever I've done, and find a way to become better. And we can all do this. This is important for us to figure out, right? And so I explained these things, and what I'm doing is I'm making a meta critique of what's going on. I'm saying me identifying that and talking about it is going against my own authority, right? I want to remove myself from narcissism, right? That's good. It's good to be confident, that's a good thing, but not over and above where you always need to be the center of attention, or you think that you can't make mistakes. So me doing that is a counteraction towards any narcissistic tendencies in me, which is good, right? And so the reason I'm doing that has a larger philosophical function within how the group is supposed, and just our lives in general, is supposed to be put together, right? There's the principles we can follow, and we can talk about those philosophically, and then there's the interactions between members of the group, right? These are like all interactions. And these are the people. What we do is we look at these properties, right? And they're all general tendencies. It doesn't need to be the case that in every situation a human being will act this way. It's just that if there is a potential, it's not that every bridge will fall, but they're more specific with metal, right, than human behavior. But even if there is a possibility of a thing, then a responsible engineer, whether it's the bridge or your people, you're going to try to figure out a way to arrange things. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. How is it put together such that this outcome is much less likely to occur? And so my value for things not ending up in a bad way with authority and these other kinds of properties, because I value that so much, I see how important it is when I fuck up to use that as an opportunity to teach how whenever we fuck up, it's a way for us to eliminate the possibility of these outcomes in the social group from occurring. And so it's a good thing, right? As long as we're responsible. You just want to keep on fucking up and never do anything about it, right? Yeah. So that's me trying to lead by example, and not saying that you're never going to make a mistake. You're going to fucking do something stupid someday. It's just whatever happens, right? Like it's like almost as soon as you get your shit together, then it's like, how long does it take for things to just, you bite off more than you chew again. You're like, I want this, and then it becomes overwhelming again, right? Because you get bored, and it's a good thing, because then you grow. Then you're like, hey, I'm bored now. Now I'm gonna do this, and then you're going down that path.
Which psychologist said that? I remember hearing that somewhere. That the mind gets bored of the life being perfect. That it'll cause something on purpose in order to create some type of new response in the brain, like a new stressor or like a dopamine or adrenaline rush, which might be positive or negative.
Sorry, brother, I'm not sure. But keep that in the mind. Yeah, check it out. Yeah. So okay. So there's the structure of the group. Is how we put the pieces together, right? And then there's like, what is the group doing? Because you get a bowling league, they'd be like the best friends ever, you know? They have a training schedule. They have like, they're very good. It's the best bowling league ever. You know what I mean? That's not really it's not the philosophy bowling league. It is the philosophy society based on eudaimonia, well-being, you know what I mean? Our own autonomy, our freedom, how we can live a good life. Those things are important for us. And the reason that we're doing that is because it doesn't really exist yet. Or else we would all just go there. Like, okay, let's just go to that place. but it's not there yet. So I'm like, fuck, I guess I have to do that now. I would rather just sometimes play video games or whatever, but like that thing's not there yet. So I guess I'm gonna have to go do that because I can see that it's not there. If it was there, it'd just be so much easier. It's someone's already done all the work. You've just already done it all. Maybe you'll hire me. I don't really know, whatever. And so until I see it as a duty to put the effort in for myself and everybody else, because it's good for me and it's good for you. And it just seems intuitive to me. It just seems that this is it's very simple. Like it just seems simple to organize. So if you want to have a contrast case, like if you go to a Catholic church, it's not structured this way. Right? There is an authority. There's the big G, who is like the ultimate authority that is like beyond the whole thing. It's not a person. That's scary to me. It's like I can't even see you and you're fucking, you're like there. But then there's like the priest and his close-knit priestly people.
And one-way thinking.
Exactly.
Would you say that authority as in like God?
Yeah.
That's what he calls Big G. That's why I was laughing.
Big G.
That's weird how the Catholics view it. Compared to because there's Catholics, there's Orthodox, Presbyterians, and they all have different beliefs and they all kind of interpret it differently.
Mm-hmm.
I believe all of the other religions of Catholicism are off branches. Of Christianity are off branches of Catholicism. Catholicism. Sorry.
The Protestants, because they're protesting against what
Correct.
Catholic
Yeah. And the evangelists,
evangelicals.
the evangelicals, like all the other off branches of Christianity came from the Catholic split
Mhm.
in that side of the church. And for some
Well, they
reason,
have a belief that the Catholic Church over time became corrupt because of,
Yeah.
it's very complicated, but they were, in cahoots with crime, crime systems and that sort of thing. So they said, this is not what Christianity is about. We're going to do our own thing. So they became thenceforth the Protestants because they protested against.
I was curious, like, why start your own off branch that's already corrupt instead of going to the other side of the schism? Like when the schism happened, the East and the West Church, Orthodoxy has been basically untouched since 2,000 years ago. And then those people that want to start their own because something wasn't right, why did they just switch over to the other side and they want to start something fresh?
It was too far. An example is Tudor England, medieval era England. Henry VIII, at the time, England was a Catholic country, and they always had to revert to the number 2 of the Big G, which was the Pope in the Vatican. So through him, God spoke. It was his word on earth, and he wanted to remarry, but the Pope from the Vatican basically said, God above says this is no good. You cannot remarry. So he goes, after this, I'm going to create my own church, which is in existence today, called the Church of England. And he created his own church. He became the head of that church, and then he proceeded to say, I'm allowed to remarry. So
I didn't know that.
So the reason I mention this is because he wouldn't. I think it'd be counterintuitive to kind of go, oh, I'm going to go Orthodox and go completely opposite. I think they can only do a variation of what they know at the time. I mean, considering I'm going to really travel to Asia in a 12-hour flight. I don't know. That's just my theory. Just from my historical background.
So
Love it.
in contrast case, when we look at this, my approach to social organizations this way, the church, at least Catholicism, I have experience with that, as a social organization, is structured where you have, so there's Big G, right? And Big G is not even a thing, it's like everywhere. But I guess I can write it like that, just because it's actually more representative.
Confused.
There you go. There's Big G,
Oh, my.
right? And then if this was like, if Big G is everything, because God is everywhere
Mhm.
in this group, right? Then there's, I guess, yeah, you have like the Pope, who's supposed to have some connection to the whole thing, right? Pope is supposed to have some direct communication with G, which is cool. I guess that's good for you. That's great. And then as you go down, there's a whole hierarchy system here, and there's like the priest, and then the priest communicates to the people, right? And so the purpose of this group is fundamentally from the person all the way up to Big G. So anything that goes against that is like basically death. You're just burnt. That's what they used to do. Maybe now you're excommunicated, or there'll be
Or
some.
sin. Like, oh, they're sinning. It's like, what? Like, it's not. It's just your way of thinking. That's what bugs me about being raised up Catholic. It's like one way of thinking, but there's just so many different ways to view it. Bugs me a lot.
Yeah, it irritates me too. That's why I studied philosophy. That's one of the first reasons why. And so all of these social psychological properties still exist here, even though Big G is there. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't take it away, right? And so what happens is, it used to be like, like especially with things like the Spanish Inquisition or like the Great Witch Hunt, there was a lot of death and suffering for disbelievers or heretics or blasphemers. Not good, right? But people at the very least will like excommunicate you or shame you for different ways of thinking, whereas in this environment, so that would be an interaction. So if there's a person, there's the general principle, okay, which is like, for example, God exists. It has to still be inside. So principle, God exists, right? And if one person goes against the principle, right? One person says, even if they question it, they say, well, maybe God doesn't exist, right? That is the seed of like negative faith, the lack of faith. And within any kind of social group, if one person has like a negative property, that will bring down the whole group. And so the group's response is to have some kind of way to deal with negative faith. They like white blood cells going to like a cut, right? And then it like clots the blood and then you get like a scab. People, when you have a contrary belief to them, they will like deal with you somehow, right? And there's good and bad ways of doing that. And so that's an interaction function, right? That's how this thing is working here. Right? And within the Catholic tradition, there's ways that they try to deal with that. Like some people have said, like, you just, like, what do they say to me when I'm like, I'm willing to believe in God. You just haven't convinced me yet. Why does God choose to speak to you and not to me? That's not fair to me. That makes me a little sad and depressed now that I have to be an atheist. That sucks. Like, why am I not worth anything? I thought we were all God's children.
Just a little bit. One of the Protestants' way of thinking is that that defer to the Catholic Church is that actually the individual is able to have direct communication with.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So that's, I think, it's good. I think. Yeah.
It's from a hierarchical perspective. Instead of it going this way, it would go all the way around like a spoke. So you'd have the Protestant, right? That would be like this, Big G, and then there would be the person, or let's just say people. And the people all can interpret the Bible on their own accord, right? Whereas the Pope and the lineage from the Pope down to, or the social hierarchy down to the priest, are the interpreters of the Bible, and you're supposed to listen to them. Yeah.
See, as an outsider, like I don't know too much about the Catholic side myself, but I don't think that the Pope is the authority figure.
For them, it is. Yeah.
Mhm.
Whether that's right or wrong, we can discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on belief, if it's right or wrong. Like, it would be right if it's your belief and wrong if it's your belief
It'd be correct for a Catholic to believe that. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Church, who's your authoritative figure?
We have the bishop, where it doesn't have the same impact as the Pope does on the Catholics. So, like people like, I don't want to say they worship the Pope, but a lot of people view him very highly and in a way worship him. Where it's like right to worship a man.
Yeah, worship is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I don't believe in worship in any way.
And I just believe Vatican is very corrupt. In my personal opinion, it's its own state. And
Yeah, there's some things. Yeah, for sure. We could talk about that.
it's a whole different.
So what I'm trying to say is that to be like there's philosophy as a mode of inquiry to ask questions, right? Which is an individual thing. Okay. And that's good. That's great. You know, we're all here for that. Let's figure it out. But then when we talk about a social group, because I'm not just a person, we're people. So what does it mean for people and how we relate to each other and how we think together to have wisdom? You know, like it's wise to wear a belt, for example, if you wear pants, because your pants may fall down. It's wise to tie your shoelaces if you have shoes with shoelaces, so that you don't trip on your shoelaces. And so when we take the same reasoning and apply it to any social group, it is wise to be aware of the properties of social groups that lead to our failures and construct the social group in such a way to avoid those failures. Or whatever you want to call it. Maybe failure is not the right word, but dysfunction, you know, the cause of harm or suffering, right? And so when we look at religious groups, like there's religious groups, there could be a person that is interested in stuff in the Bible and wants to understand it and read it, and then it makes them happy. They like it. That's an individual thing, and we can talk about that. But as soon as it becomes social, that's kind of today's conversation, right? And what I'm trying to say is that I can't just talk about this stuff. It's my duty and responsibility to demonstrate it, especially when I fuck up, right? Especially when I fuck up. And how do you know you fuck up? Either you can be aware of it or somebody else can tell you. And the narcissist just and they're gonna fuck you. Who are you to say that to me? Who am I not to say it? Like how does that even make any sense? Like what realm are you from to think someone can't say something to you? You know, you're quick. Like it's not a thinking thing. It's an emotional thing. Because what you said hurts me or makes me upset. And we would say, is the intention to cause harm? Like I'm really trying to hurt you. You know, like a sadistic psychopath. They're trying to hurt you. That's one thing. Or it's an observation. I observe this. And that observation is contrary to what you may observe. I never saw that. I didn't know there was like literally shit on my face. I'm like, oh my God. Like, how did that get there? Right? That's like the worst thing. There's poop on your face. That's like the worst thing. You know? What did I do today?
When? How?
You know, like how close was I to that asshole that there got shit on my face? And you know, and so there's a healthy way, because if there really is, like there's literally a piece of shit in your teeth, buddy. Like, come on. Fuck you, man. Why would you say that to me? Well, because I'm your friend and I don't want you to walk around with shit in your face or on your teeth. Right? Because there's the person who's throwing the shit at you, right? Like if I crap in my hand and I'm like, fuck you, and I throw the shit at you. That's like you got in my eye. Like that's one thing, right? But then there's your friend who's like, hey, you were pissed off the other day. Right? And if you perceive that as someone throwing shit at you, that's the psychological problem and one of the symptoms of narcissism, right? Because any Like there's a way that you see, okay, that's a new person here. There's you, and then there's your perspective. And you can have self-awareness. You can be like, I'm aware of myself. Pretty cool guy. You've seen that guy? I saw him today. I was walking through the bathroom. Boom, mirror's right there. Awesome. Right? You can see yourself. I can be aware of my own behavior. But my awareness is not the totality of everything that I am or is. What am I? What is this thing of me? You may see things that I don't see. And so this is the self, right? Great thing to have, super useful, And then there's the other thing called the others, right? Like it may be the case I have a drummer. He is an other. He is not me. He plays the drums while I sing, right? And that's a good thing that others exist. Because you could be in a position where you don't think there's no other minds. That is a philosophical thing. We're going to keep that in the closet for now. We can open that tomb of a textbook and talk about it, but it's not really important right now.
But there's not separate minds.
Yeah.
That we're all one mind. Like
no, that everyone else is a zombie.
Yeah. I mean, they're called NPCs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those people in society.
Sure. Okay, so self and other, right? So the other or others, they're observing you from like an objective position, meaning that it's not from within, it's external. And they can have their own biases. These are social properties. There's like other biases that they can interpret your behavior, like the fundamental attribution error. Let's say you're walking and you like stub your toe. You're like, fuck. Right? And then someone like opens the door and all they see is, fuck. Like that guy's an asshole. Told me to fuck off. He's an asshole. Right?
Called attribution error.
The fundamental attribution error.
Fundamental attribution error. So when something gets taken out of context or without an explanation.
Yes. It's when you attribute a person's behavior to their character and not the situation. Right? Fucking asshole. You fucking told me to fuck off. No, bro, I fucking stubbed my toe. Look, it's like bleeding. Oh. I retract the asshole ticket. Like, you don't have to pay a fine anymore.
I think it's annoying though, because if there's people that are like that do that constantly, you have to always explain yourself for some context.
Well, I find that it's not also just narcissists that react this way. I find it can also be low IQ people that they just can't understand what you're trying to say, and they can only function with very, I don't know, at a very artificial level is the only way that they can sort of argue with you, I find. So they pick on things that have nothing to do with the argument at hand.
So low IQ narcissist.
We've been talking about low cognitive capacity.
I don't
That's
say
how-
no IQ.
That's okay. You can say that.
Yeah.
But you can just be drunk and be stupid. You can be super smart and just be fucking drunk right now or tired. Right? It also could be IQ, like your ability to detect patterns or process information. Okay, so there's our own self-awareness, and then there's the awareness of others, right? And so this is the bias mitigation thing. How do we resolve our own biases? Because your bias is how you see the world, and it means it's wrong. That's what a bias is. It's not correct. It's when it's a fucking problem, right? And so only other people can really help you with the nature of what we're talking about, because you actually can't see it. You can't see it.
Because you're a narcissist.
You're just being biased.
Oh,
The narcissist is when I say, hey, that's the whole poop on your face thing. That's when you perceive me saying, hey, brother, like there's paint on your hat. You go, fuck you, man. Just a great hat. You see the fucking paint on it. Because I see it.
Okay. That's the reaction.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's how they process your observations that go contrary to what they see. Right? And I use the poop example because it's funny.
Yeah.
Right? But it's actually really gross. It's the last thing. Like there maybe are worse things, like other bodily fluids that you're like, like how we can have to have a discussion about that. That's not the point right now. The point is just like a very easy thing that has been with humans for a long time and other animals. And primates throw shit at each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why I'm bringing it up. Because we've been doing this for a long time. But the narcissist almost perceives any observation of you that you didn't see yourself that is bad, that goes against the way they see themselves, right? This notion that I'm perfect though. Like you've come to see my perfection today. It's like, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? Like now we need to throw shit at you. You start talking like that. Oh, right. You can dodge one, but not four. We're gonna get you, you son of a bitch. So
Thought of something worse than that for some reason. I don't know why.
okay.
Shitty wet willy.
Okay. That's shit in the ear. Okay, there you go. That's what it is.
A wet willy is like when you put slide on your finger, you put it in someone's ear.
But yeah.
I think in elementary school, yeah, like you do it around.
We don't do that anymore.
There you guys just stab people.
Oh, no,
Not
I'm
you
talking
guys.
about in school. Like
Oh.
they would put your head in the toilet or something like that.
In a shitty toilet.
Elementary,
Right?
high school.
High school time.
We never had that here in Canada. Did you ever do something like that?
They talk about, but I never observed it or seen it.
It was like a wild one.
Okay, so let's reel it back. So what I'm trying to say is that when someone gives you an observation of yourself
Yeah.
that is outside of your what they call self-concept, so there's a way ego, okay, those are the same terms basically. Ego is Freudian. Self-concept is more contemporary social psychology. And when someone tells you something that's out of that, so the self-concept, so it's like, this is how this is put ego here for him, right? And if they say something's out here and it's negative, the response is that this person's the problem. And a lot of the times they will automatically assume it's gaslighting, that I am making you question your sanity for my own benefit, because that's manipulation, right? Oh, you're just crazy. Oh, really? You're just a little crazy, right? And it's like it fucks with you a little bit, you know?
Is there a connection with that and the concept of the black sheep in families, for example?
Yeah.
They become I guess, what do you call it? The scapegoat of all the family's
Yes.
problems get thrown onto the side.
That's another one, man. There you go. I have been the scapegoat for a long time, my friend, from a very young age.
Because there's a golden child and then there's a scapegoat, right?
Yeah. Scapegoating comes from the idea that the tribe would put all the sins on the goat and banish the goat into the desert, thinking that all the evilness would go with the goat. Poor goat, you know, maybe it wasn't going to be like tortured to death or something, but it's still going to fucking suffer out there. Okay, so the reason this is important is because when there is a bias in the group, these groups, you know, maybe once this philosophy society in like however many years is like nice and tight, we can go in and try to help these people figure the shit a little bit better. Not to say God doesn't exist, but just their interrelations. So they're not as biased and they can be as healthy as they can be based on the principles that they have. Right? That's good. You know, I don't want if you're going to be religious, just try to do it in the best way possible. If that's up to you to make that decision, but I would prefer you guys to be as healthy as you can. I don't agree with some of those things that you're going to do, like your principles and your beliefs, but I want you to be as healthy as you can as a human. Right? We give each other that. That's fine. But in this group, this is in some ways more of a meta group because we're not tied to any specific belief. It's the methodology that's important. And when you take that methodology and you apply it to philosophies, certain thinkers, we can draw upon all of them with the methodology. So you're naturally just stronger. Why? Because you got everything. Right? I can take a little bit of Christianity. Well, that was good. Be good to your neighbor, i.e. be good to other people. Sure, put that in the bucket. That's a good one. Right? Stone gay people, not good. That one is over here, right? And we're going to eschew that in every form and every conceptualization. Never appropriate, right? So, okay. For this to work, one of the interaction things is the individual, aside from the authority part. We kind of talked about that. There's more to that, but we need to figure out the individual stuff first. Because when you get into the social hierarchy stuff of the authority, the difficult thing is the very top group, they're all trying to fight to the top, but because this one has power, the secondary, third, tertiary, these ones, they will align themselves with the top person, right? And then they will just fucking banish you to the bottom if you fuck around at all. That's a social thing. You'll get fired, right? Clique behavior works this way. So we need to start with the one individual first. So what are the problems with the individual, right? There is an issue of self-other distinction. Within the self, we have biases. These are some social things, right? James brought up scapegoating, super important to deal with. We need to figure that out. That is a social phenomena that is going to be challenging because it's like the clique stuff a little bit, right? So you're going to have to come up against a bunch of people. And how are you going to do that? Let's figure it out, right?
Can you just remove yourself from the equation and not fight whatever fight they want to have?
Sometimes, yes, you do have to do that, but you're going to have to get a new equation that's good to counterbalance it, right? That's what this is supposed to be in some ways too.
Because, for example, I mean, from my own personal experiences in the professional world, if I come across somebody in the workplace that I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I also have a wealth of life experiences. I can kind of tell maybe this person has serious narcissistic tendencies, or they might even be a complete sociopath. I would just refuse to even have any association with them to ensure I think I'm being proactive in that I won't have to have any kind of problems involving them in the future. So I just make sure that I have zero contact with them. I don't even try to negotiate or compromise or even try to minimize my interaction with them. I just completely ensure I have no connection with them whatsoever.
That's one move. Yes.
Yeah.
So in self-defense, what do they say the best self-defense is?
Don't be in that situation.
Run away,
Okay.
right? It's the best self. It is the universal move. There's one move that'll solve all the self-defense. It's not true, but it'll solve all the fights.
The easiest.
Maybe, until you're with like your loved one, or you're with like a child, or someone else is being beaten, right? Then running away is cowardly. But maybe running away, if it's a fire and you're the only one in the building, fuck yeah, that's self-interest. The fuck out of there. In the book of Achilles' Justice, like if this was a thing, right? The interaction part, there's a whole section on different moves. I don't necessarily know all of them. And when I say book, I just mean like there is something to be said, whether I read it or somebody else does, about what to do. And that's one of them. Disengagement. Yes, do that. If you have nothing else to do, you can at least do that. But the problem is you can't universalize disengagement.
Well, I'm just acting from a purely selfish kind of perspective. Like I just do whatever is best for myself, even if it's to the detriment of something. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, I'm going to say I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say self-interest. I'm not going to say self-interest.
Just because I spent too much of my life compromising and putting others before my own needs, and then I reached a point where that didn't work for me anymore. So
We can talk about that.
yeah,
Disengagement might not be there might be other moves you can make. Think of it like chess, right? There's different kinds of pieces, there's different arrangements, and there's different moves. Some moves may be bad. Why? Because the piece dies. There may be something that you lose, right? And you can say, I know, but it's not about this one piece, it's about the game. And then you can say, it's not about the game, it's about all the games. It's about my mastery as a chess player. Like, yeah.
Did you mention 2 weeks ago something about there's a term for it, somebody that looks at everything as though it was a nail that it needs to be hammered?
Maslow's hammer.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that reaction is kind of like that, where I treat it in a very conventional way.
But bam, you get a star today. I don't have any gifts for you.
Yeah.
Because you identified a potential bias in yourself, which is very good. Let's give James a very good dance. Very, very good. Ow. Ow, ow. The reason it's important is because very often we are unable to see our own biases, right? So that's a high level of maturity and self-awareness and oneness with the self to let go of this other part of me because the meta self, the thing that knits it all together, can see what it's connecting these things together, right? And there may be a new self, a new way of expressing you that is different than that, and that can now start to grow. That is like that's what I was saying. That process is being mentally healthy. It's not a stagnant thing where I'm like, I am, living my life. It's learning how to flow, right? And when something comes in, you move with it, and then you keep on going, right? Or
I consider it like being aware of awareness itself. So I'm almost kind of stepping out of my body and looking at everything.
It's beautiful.
So I don't know. I think that's, as you said, it's about mental health and just trying to be as mentally healthy as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's very important. And we all want to do that, right? We want to be able to be, that's why I said last week, with emotions, the first step is being aware of how I feel, or what is it that I'm feeling. And there may be a bunch of emotions in there. Like imagine if you had like more than one piece of dough, right? And I put blue dye in this one, it's blue. I put red dye in this one and purple dye in this one. And then I just kind of like put them together. You can distinctly see the different dyes. And then I start to massage the dough together, and then the colors start to mix. Sometimes, right, you become aware and you're like, holy crap, I have all of these feelings. And what you want to do is distill out the emotions into distinct entities so it's easier for you to manage them. So last week we talked about the object of emotion. There's something that's making me upset. There is a thing, and I'm upset about that thing. Right? Yeah. Or you're like super excited.
It is.
I'm trying to do it. Maybe I'm a jackass, and that's fine. I accept that. You can be elated. Woo, I'm excited. Right? And that could turn into like mania, and it could become a bad thing. Right? I'm impulsive. This feels good. I'm gonna go, holy shit, I got in trouble, right? Like, that wasn't a good idea. Now I know that, right? And so when I become aware, or after a crazy situation, I'm like back in my place, wherever that might be, that my mind can be aware of me and myself. And now I'm stuck with this ball of fucking, it's not shit, but like it makes me feel a little bit like shit because a bunch of crap all stuck together. The fuck do I do with this? Right? And there's different responses to that. The appropriate way is first trying to be aware of it and to slowly breathe through it and then let those feelings separate themselves. They distill out, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, this specific thing upsets me. And then you put it on the board. You're like, okay, well, we got that one. All right. This is what I think it is right now. And then I go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then I have to identify, this is what I'm going to do about it. Okay, I have these options. This is what's going on here. I can do these things. And then I actually do it. And then I observe what happened now that I've done something. Now that I've changed the situation. Right? So this is more of what last week. But that's kind of that response to that. Okay. So in this, person's biased. How do we solve it? So you can, with just James and fucking awesome, you can be aware of it yourself and go through a process to grow. Growth is necessarily a change. Why? Because it's not the same. So change is not bad. There are different kinds of change. Having autonomy over your own change and being like, I want this, I want to become better, is good because you're in control, right?
You're in control, like you can say you're in control of, I believe, but if your habits have been pretty shitty for the longest time and you try to overwrite your brain to change your whole life around, let's say like 180 degrees, become a new person, your brain wants to keep the familiarity of those same neurons firing together and staying together, and you're trying to break that connection by creating those new habits. So the brain will keep on retaliating for quite some time until you actually can change. So it's not as simple as just like, I want to change today, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was. my brain is like, fuck you, fucker. No, you're not.
Yeah, so there's the neuroplasticity, there's habits, there's the environment or situation, right? You can decide that you want to become a new self, but there is a natural process of how it manifests, right? And that's growth. That's what growth is.
Mm.
Acorn, oak tree, right? There's a process.
Mm.
So being aware, and then the other thing is other people can help you with your awareness. Now, that's the interaction part, okay? The connection, how it's put together, okay? Now, there's a way, we haven't got to this yet, but how, we did briefly with the disarming technique and other things, but how do we tell each other things that we're aware of, right? Because if someone does something that makes me upset and I have a feeling, if I speak from that anger, that can make it challenging for the other person to be like, oh, okay, right? And work from that. So awareness of yourself and how you deal with your own feelings is the first thing, right? And not letting those emotions control you. Because then it's not even you. What is it?
That inside of you,
Yeah, what is that? Good, thank you. What is that?
past emotions.
Unresolved.
Yeah, thank you. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
And what is that emotion?
Something that's triggering you.
And what is the thing that was triggering it? So you weren't here. We call it the object of the emotion, the thing that causes how I feel, right? But it's not even that thing. It's just what it evokes in me.
And interpretation, maybe.
Very good. Where's that from?
Mhm.
He's your buddy.
Burns?
Oh,
Yeah,
who's that guy?
good old guy. You know the thing or two.
Okay. What book did he write?
Feeling good.
What's that book?
Wow.
What's that book about?
It's about feeling good, man. It's gotta read the book just to feel good.
What's the main
It's
thesis?
I'm just about to
the
read
way
that
we
book.
talk to ourselves, our inner dialogue, basically, and the way
Okay.
that we speak to ourselves, and
Hmm.
the errors, quote unquote, that we tell ourselves, or like the things that we tell ourselves that make us feel even more shit.
Cognitive.
Which are cognitive distortions.
Yeah. Can you name me 3 of them?
Overgeneralization.
What's this?
It's when, like, let's say the hood latch breaks on your car, like happened to me yesterday. I was in my car, I go pop the hood, freaking cable just snapped right on me.
Oh.
So like, fuck. I'm like, I'm not gonna let it ruin the rest of my time here at the shop. So I'm just gonna breathe. And then the more time I'm stressed about this and I'm mad about this, the less time I'll have to actually think about to fix it. So overgeneralization is when you take one bad event and you associate the rest of your day with it. Right? No, not wrong.
Close.
Close.
It's that would be the negative mental filter.
Ah.
When the drop of ink makes the whole thing
Yes.
the same color. Overgeneralization is when one instance gets generalized to all instances. So if you said that every car is going to break, every latch is going to break.
Like racist people.
Yes,
Right?
sure.
That one black person treated me wrong, so every single black person is a piece of shit, basically. That's an
yeah,
overgeneralization.
yes.
Okay. There's black and white thinking. No,
That's all or nothing thing.
all or nothing thinking.
So it's like I'm never going to be able to fix any cars.
So it's a good book to read. I had that book and I was just about to read it.
To be honest, when I first started off coming here to Philosophy Society last September, I was in a very bad mental state. And on the David Burns scale, there's like depression scale, and it was pretty high on the scale. And after going there for like maybe a month and a half or 2, from like being really, really bad on the scale, I'm not gonna disclose how much, but it's pretty bad. It's basically going to seek assistance. But I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna feel it out and see how the group goes. And then after about a month or so, I started feeling amazing. And it's weird because David Burns in the book states that 80% of people who read this book within 1 month have a depression. So we're our own worst enemies, and we create most of the problems from the events around us in our own head.
Cognitive distortion.
Cognitive distortion, because that's all it is. It's so simple, and yet
I'm going to start reading the book. All right. I won't procrastinate anymore and start reading this
the
book.
time and place.
Yes.
That's in the book too.
Thank
Procrastination.
Yeah. And the third one, I can't remember the third one. shit.
I'll stop looking at it, maybe it'll come.
Okay, you think.
I don't remember.
You did good. That was good.
Oh, I applied them though, but I don't remember the names.
All or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, the mental filter,
Yeah.
jumping to conclusions, the fortune teller error,
Fortunately.
or mind reading,
Mhm.
catastrophizing, minimization, maximization, emotional reasoning, labeling,
Mm.
should statements,
Mm.
and personalization. I think that was 10.
Yeah.
So there's a way for us to deal with ourselves. Assuming that doesn't work, the group can help us understand our own mistakes. And the problem of narcissism is when we don't accept the observations of others. And what that does is it necessarily contradicts the structure of the group, right? What we want to do is we want to work on our techniques of interacting with each other in such a way that we can avoid the pitfalls of narcissism. And if someone is being held by the clutches of that way of being, we want the group to be able to help them. The Philosophy Society is at its core, or one of its main purposes is to solve the problem of mental illness, which includes personality disorders. And many people may disagree that it's even possible, but I'm going to try. I'm trying. So I think that there's a way.
So narcissism is a personality disorder, like
Yeah.
a mental disorder technically.
It's in the DSM. NPD. One of the symptoms is arrogant or haughty responses to feedback or criticism. When someone gives you feedback, you get angry and you disregard what they say. It's one of the symptoms.
See, I agree with you on that one. How I believe you could train, quote unquote, train someone to stop being a narcissist through their thought processes, but then
The evidence suggests otherwise.
like that's hardwired into the brain.
Well, because they've been doing it there's many different reasons. Like you talked about low
I deny
IQ.
that. I think it takes a long time though. A lot of people don't want to put in the work. Just saying.
Yeah. We can explore this and try to understand it better, right? And there's a lot of research there's some research that's been done. Narcissists generally do not go to therapy unless their marriage is failing, they're being fired, or the law forces them to.
That's what I mean. They don't put in the work on themselves. So if they were to, like I've witnessed one of my friends in childhood, they did have strong narcissism, and today like they went through like 15 years of hardcore therapy. But if you put in the work, they're happy today. And I'm like, holy, it's like a total different, it's like a new version of them. And so I believe it is reversible. It just takes a lot more effort and time to create the difference.
Since you mentioned therapy, I also want to draw attention to the this new kind of therapy that comes from places like California, where they tend to cater actually to people's narcissistic tendencies and to kind of confirm that actually you're perfectly fine, it's your family that's the problem. And they kind of capitalize on this because they find it's a lucrative market where a lot of people don't, instead of making them better, you actually flame them into being worse than what they already are, and they're looking at it at a purely kind of a monetary gain sort of.
Yeah, it could be a little scammy.
I find that with pop psychology that is prevalent in social media right now, that's the impression I get is completely evading all accountability of taking responsibility for the way you kind of probably are perceived by others, by saying there's a problem, you're perfect, you're amazing, go slay and do all these things. I think it's horrible. There's a complete absence of introspection essentially, and asking maybe I am the problem sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite problematic. Therapy is good as long as it's not that kind of therapy. That's my
Definitely right. 100% right.
So
Thank you.
what we're doing is we're talking about the way that the group is structured, and to say that it's a philosophy society or philosophy group is the structure itself is representative of a wise way to put people together. And we can look at how other groups are different because of the principles that the group is directed towards, or that is the value structure that the group comes together as an end, and the interactions between them. And so when we think about the ways that groups fall apart or how groups make mistakes or errors, if the structure of the group prevents those errors, that is wise, i.e. philosophical, right? And so that's what we want to do here. And so I'm showing this with the first thing about the authority thing, and we talk about how to manage emotions and the acceptance that we do get upset, and I get upset. So these things happen sometimes, right? What do we do about it though? That's the wise thing. We talked about the if there's our own awareness and the awareness of the other. The problem in narcissism is disregarding what the other says, just immediately. But we want to base any other comment on the content itself. Like, what are you saying? On its evidence, right? Is it true? And and it's important to communicate so we don't misinterpret things or make assumptions. And then that non-real or false bit of data becomes the object of my emotion. And I get upset about something that's not even real. That's not good, right? That would be just sort of like mind reading or jumping to conclusions again in Burns' book. So I believe that the way that this is structured, the philosophy society, can prevent problems that we have psychologically, like scapegoating, right? And we want to talk about different moves we can make. Disengagement may be important, or like taking space, you know? But at the same time, maybe there's other environments that are just better for you, that are healthier or safer, or that you can grow more optimally in. You know? And so I think it's important to let us talk about what can we do? What is the specific interaction? What are the properties of the interaction, right? Like emotion, attention is one, the content of what the person's saying, the meaning or significance of the interaction. Like, what does this mean? You know, it's like, I'm at a pill, I'm buying milk. Okay. Person told me to fuck off. Why? I don't know, right? And then so my lack of awareness could be maybe a bias on myself. So then somebody else is like, oh, this is what occurred, right? Like if this was actually extrapolated to all of society, then if you were the security guard, you'd be like, oh, this is why they told you to fuck off. He would be able to give me the awareness that I lacked. And if I was able to say, oh, really? And then I look at the cashier and I'm like, is that why? They're like, yeah, fuck you. And then the security guard would say, but saying fuck you is not helping them understand why their behaviors, whatever, or whatever's going on, you know? Like the fundamental attribution error again. And so, yeah, like the next place to talk about is to talk about this interaction stuff more, right? And what control do we have? You know, we enter in some stoicism, like where do we draw the line?
Can I ask you about that? Well, let's say you're angry and you have repeatedly expressed your point and stood your ground against for something, and it's not getting anywhere. Is it justified to yell, to raise the tone of your voice in order to get your message across, or does that have to cancel out the idea of being stoic?
It does, it's non-stoic for sure. It might be a little Aristotelian. Like
What?
if I yell at somebody because they're in
It might be what? Sorry.
Aristotelian, like Aristotle.
Ah.
If I yell at somebody because they're in danger,
That's
or
different, yeah. For like to get someone's attention more. Think of like if you're angry at someone, I'm trying to get your point across.
yeah, it's
Not a healthy way of expressing, right?
it's not that it's not necessarily unhealthy.
Mm.
It may be effective, but are you in control of yourself?
Mm.
I think that's the most important thing. You know, I am not accepting this. Like you can say it and then be stern and assertive. If you're being aggressive though, right? Like my intention is to hurt mentally or physically the other person. That's not really good because you're being malicious now, right? And one of the hardest things to do is when you perceive somebody as hurting you, not to be reactive and hurt them back.
Mm.
You hurt me, well, guess what? I got a big handful of shit. I'm throwing great at you.
That's being mature, I believe. It all comes down to that.
Well, a poet once said, raise your words, not your voice, because it's water that grows flowers, not thunder.
That's good.
Nice.
Very well said.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna stay cool, calm, patience.
So yeah, so this is a meta discussion about the philosophy society as a group and the wisdom of, like, for example, how to build a bridge. How do we create a group? How is that a wise thing to do? And specifically, this group can go through parts of the history of philosophy, but that again is distinct from the living well versus academic conceptualization, right? So you can go to the university to learn to read, write, and have lectures. But when you come to me, we're learning how to be better people, right? And that's wise. And there's not enough places you can really go that does that in a way that's sound, that's based on science, that's philosophically coherent. If you notice, I don't use the word spirit or energy ever.
Yeah.
As much as you might want to believe in those things, it's not necessary.
What do you mean by believing in those things for energy? It's physics, man. There's energy
wanna hear.
everywhere.
So you can observe gravity having its effect
Yes.
on my mass,
Yes.
right? You cannot observe the strong and weak nuclear force that is holding the atoms together that are inside the molecules of my body.
Not with our eyes.
We can observe the electromagnetic function of the lights emitting or illuminating the room. So those are all different forms of energy or forces of nature in the universe.
So you don't believe in that?
There you go. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I believe in those forms.
So that's energy.
Very
Plants
scientific.
and flowers, they have electromagnetic frequencies in them.
This is
You can actually clip something onto them. They have a machine that shows how much energy they're putting out. For
Yes.
example,
Yes.
roses have the highest frequency of all flowers. So that's why if you inhale scented flowers, you feel kind of like,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that's
Let
what the
someone
whole
know
point
that.
of aromatherapy is that you're getting the energetic stuff.
It's okay, whatever. Like,
It's a
Okay.
debate.
on the table. Let's take
Yeah,
it.
Cool.
Actually, gonna add something onto that, where you say they added some like some prongs, basically, that measure the amount of resistance that's going through the plants and the voltage, and like very, very small amounts, but there's always an electrical current going through the plants, and that plants are telepathic. And this guy did a scientist an experiment. I forgot his name, and he connected all these plants to the different machines that was showing all the sine waves and like the amount of frequency and like the
It's like the book I'm trying to get you to read.
You can actually hear it.
I don't know. And he started cooking some vegetables, and all the plant signals started going crazy, like haywire, off the charts. And he's like, "What the fuck is going on over here?"
Yeah,
And he came to the conclusion that there's some type of connection between plants that's through the air or something. I'll bring up the study if you want. It's
That's
very
cool.
interesting.
I'm very
Someone
interested.
never
Yeah.
knew about that.
so
I got a question. Did you do you know Joe Dispenza, the author?
I am
Becoming
aware of him.
Supernatural.
I haven't read any of his books.
You should I think you would like his book. It's called Becoming Supernatural.
Have you read it?
Yes. I read it 3 times.
I was thinking about it.
I
Have you read it?
not yet, but you just got the book.
Yes. Nice.
That's convincing me. Ah, read it first.
I've
and-
heard of that book actually.
I-
It's Supra or Super?
Sorry?
Becoming
Becoming Supernatural.
Supernatural.
Yes.
okay, so to comment on the plant thing,
Yeah.
right? There may be communication between entities, but communication does not mean that they are sentient or conscious. So when the cloud, yeah, and when a cloud has a certain like degree of negative charge, then lightning can occur, right? But it doesn't mean that the earth and the cloud are talking to each other. Because when you use the word talking, that is a human thing.
Are they talking?
No, I'm just giving an example. That's a human thing. And one fallacy is called anthropomorphication, where we take human characteristics, like the moon is smiling, and we put them on non-human things, right? Like the, well, this is a little different, but there's like that piece of French toast or grilled cheese that has like the people think you see Mary on it or something like that, right? That's a little different. That's a different thing. It's like, it's a visual illusion. Anyways, the point is that even though the plants may, if it's true they're growing up in frequency, they still may not have awareness. And the reason that they don't have awareness, that consciousness for plants is completely different than it is for us, is because we have a central nervous system.
Don't plants have like their own nervous system?
Well, not the way that humans do,
So, oh,
right? Like if you torture an animal, right, like a raccoon, it will feel pain in a different way that, like when we use the word pain there, then when I like cut the plant, it biologically may detect that there's been damage to it. But for example, if like the psychopath's like, I'm going to eat your eyeball, and you're going, ah! Like, not only do I not want to lose, like, I don't want you to hurt me, I don't want to lose my eye. Like, I don't want to be disfigured. Like, that's scary to me, right? If I tell the raccoon, I am going to skin you and eat you, the raccoon doesn't understand what I'm saying. Nor does a raccoon have self-awareness to the same degree that humans do. Like, humans are like for example, cows, when they're going to be slaughtered, they can be in terror and shit themselves. They know something bad's going to happen, right? And so there may be there could be some degree of existential anxiety going on there, right?
It's stored in their body.
But it's different than humans. It doesn't justify how slaughterhouses are conducted. Maybe this is inhumane. We can talk about that. But I'm just trying to say that there is a difference in the way that we feel and perceive things and how we experience pain and how we communicate than inanimate objects like this and plants, and then the spectrum of the animal kingdom, right? So
So
there's
the same concept, just different.
I'm going to say they're different concepts. I'm going to say that the concept of pain, when we use that, we speak from our experience of pain or observing animals in pain, because they make sounds. They don't like it. That is the sound that it does not like what's going on, you know? And psychopaths may have evolved because they don't process that. They just keep on chopping you up like a robot. Even when you're screaming, look, hey, that's like, you know, or like when a snake is going to eat a mouse. You know what I mean?
Mm.
The mouse is screaming. The snake's like, that's good for me. That's like popcorn popping, baby. That's keep on going, you know? Whereas the mammals are like, oh no, not all of them, because a wolf will like eat you alive. It's going to start in some spot. Maybe it'll bite you and then you become paralyzed. And then you just have to just lie there and for however long.
That sucks.
That happens.
That's why I go vegan.
Yeah, what does the fucking wolf not vegan? Of all the omnivores, you're the only one that's vegan. There's carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. In the animal kingdom, right? If you go to the wolf and be like, but I'm a vegan. The wolf's like, totally cool with me, because I'm not. And if it's just me and
I don't
you,
think I'm gonna taste better than somebody that eats meat though. So I'm like, I taste like shit. You don't want me.
okay.
That's my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because oops,
Yeah, I
do I
wouldn't.
taste better? Because they oh shush. Just kidding.
Anyways, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right? So there can be like,
but there's no like expression of it, nothing that we can see with our five senses, basically.
there's biological mechanisms.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Like when you cut a tree and sap comes out to heal it.
Yes. But the experience of pain and suffering is very human,
Right.
right? And so when I say, oh, like the plant is sad today, like when I don't, there's probably at least one plant in my house right now that has not been watered, that is just, so if I say it's waiting to be watered, that's anthropomorphication. Plants don't wait. They don't fucking do that. They don't have a short-term memory.
What if we just say it for fun? Like,
Sure, you
like
can be a
no
poet.
Figure of speech.
Yeah, poetry's fine, but it's not like it's that use of language, right? To be wise is just to know if you're playing bumper cars or if you're like driving safely on the 401. if you're playing a video game, like when you're playing Grand Theft Auto, right? The roads don't matter. Like I tried to play Grand Theft Auto as if it was real. It took forever. It wasn't fun. And then I was like, 5 minutes later, I was like, fuck this. And I just was going like off hills, running people over, hitting the ambulance, backing up. I'm gonna hit it again, you know, like let's see what happens. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
But in real life, you're like, you know, because you drive by an accident, for example, and you're like, okay, that means that could be me. So I'm gonna fucking be as safe as I can, especially when other people are in the car. You know? So anthropomorphication is an individual bias, and it can be a social thing too, with like group thinking shit. Or like the authority figure, like, you know, in a cult, like Solar Temple cult, where then when Halley's Comet was going over, they believed that they could like go on the comet and go to another life. So they drank the Kool-Aid, and then the authority figure, asshole, maybe they were just ignorant, or they were an asshole and they were trying to take people's money and they just killed them all off so they got all the money. Not fucking cool, right? Or Scientology takes a lot of people's money, right? Based on L. Ron Hubbard's fictional story. Not fucking cool, right? So the Philosophy Society, in its principles, okay, and how we interact with each other is supposed to be a preventative social measure to these problems that we see in the world, which also includes mental illness. If it's physical illness, that's a different thing. But if it's the way that I'm using my mind and how I'm living my life, then you have some control. There's something you can do about it. If your brain's deteriorating, I don't know what to say, right?
Increase the gray matter.
Sure. You know, like what can you do? Let's work with what you can do. And then how can we help you? That's the response to that. Right?
So what are our principles here at Philosophy Society?
Very good question that we will leave for next week.
Stay tuned.
Stay
Next
tuned.
week on Philosophy Society.
So next week we'll talk about principles and we'll talk about interactions.
Awesome. That was a good session today.
Mhm.
It's full of dice. It was very weird. It didn't flow like up and down. It flowed like an all four, like, I don't know. It's funny.
It started with,
But it's all
still
summed
don't
up
know than I
together.
expected, yeah.
I did my job and did I not?
You did. All well done. I loved it.
It was very good.
We were all very
So you're
engaged.
gonna say something with
Thank
what?
you.
Started with you.
What did I say?
What did we talk about last week?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any other things before I end the day? Cool. Leticia, are you cool? Anything you want to talk about?
It was great, thanks. As usual, the points about narcissism were very interesting. I think I'll try to come in person as much as I can because the noise is picked up as well from the other room, so it's just better if I come in person. But it was great. It was great.
We'll eventually get a better room. We're just, it's
Yeah,
a
no
process.
worries.
Yeah, we'll figure. If you have any ideas on that, then we can talk about it.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
no worries. Thank you.